Pete Hodson.
Mr Speaker, in June of last year, Environment Canterbury paid a visit accompanied by police to the property of Mr Tim Smith, and 21 charges were subsequently brought against Mr Smith, who has subsequently pleaded guilty on all counts. Mr Smith's brother is the Honourable Dr Nick Smith, the Minister of the Environment, who has recently sponsored legislation through this House sacking Environment Canterbury. A conflict of interest therefore arises. The conflict arises because the Cabinet Manual says so. It says so very clearly. Let me quote paragraph 260. Paragraph 260 says a conflict of interest may be pecuniary or non-pecuniary concerning, for example, a member of the Minister's family. A conflict of interest may be direct or indirect. So a conflict of interest is there, all right, but the question is, how was the conflict handled? And again, the Cabinet Manual gives us some guidance. It says that where a conflict of interest arises which does not impinge on the member's own portfolio, then the Minister should declare the conflict of interest, and having declared the interest, the Minister should either withdraw from the discussion or seek the agreement of colleagues to continue to take part. So the Minister, if it is not in the Minister's own portfolio that the conflict of interest arises, the conflict should still be declared, and the Minister may or may not choose to leave the Cabinet meeting. In this case, the conflict of interest directly impinged on the Minister for the Environment's portfolio. Indeed, it was probably the most important thing on his plate at the time. At the time, there was probably no bigger issue in the environment portfolio than whether to sack a rather large regional council. And again, the Cabinet Manual gives guidance as to what to do under those circumstances. It says, and I'm quoting paragraph 270C, a Minister with a conflict of interest concerning a particular issue within his or her portfolio may, with the agreement of the Prime Minister, transfer responsibility for that issue to another Minister. I know because I have had issues transferred from me or to me on many different occasions, more than a dozen I would think. I do not think that happened in this case. I do not think the Minister for the Environment transferred the portfolio. I'll say why in a minute. It's important to note that a conflict of interest does not cause the Minister to behave badly. It's not suggesting that because a conflict of interest arises that the Minister necessarily performs badly in pursuit of that conflict of interest. But what does matter is that the Minister cannot say that he did not behave badly because he did not take himself out of the action in respect of this conflict of interest. And that is bad Cabinet practice, pure and simple. How am I sure, when I don't sit around Cabinet, that the Minister did not transfer responsibility to another Minister? Well, because legislation resulted. And the legislation was in the name of the Minister. And the Minister involved sat in the chair in this House during the committee stages, was the predominant Minister shepherding the legislation through. That is really bad practice. It is not just a sort of bad manners thing. It leaves the Minister vulnerable to the accusation that he did behave badly, and leaves him vulnerable to not being able to prove that he did not. Now, this is becoming a feature of this government, Mr Speaker. We saw it just yesterday in the House with the Minister of Agriculture and the response that the Prime Minister gave to a series of questions from a member of the Green Party. And I'm putting on the table my concern about the slackness of Cabinet processes in this government. I don't think conflicts of interest are being managed at all well in this government. They can be very awkward. They can be very awkward. When one is dealing with Maori land issues, sometimes half the friggin' Cabinet used to get up and leave, including a bunch of Pakehas, Mr Speaker. That certainly was the case in the South Island Landless Natives Act legislation that I was responsible for. And certainly if something like something involving Briley's 10 years ago arose, again there would be a bit of a railway station as Cabinet Ministers left. I don't think that's happening in this Cabinet. I think this Cabinet is taking an easy approach to conflicts of interest. And I'm putting it on the record now because I intend to question the Prime Minister as time goes on about management of conflicts of interest in this government. I don't think it's up to scratch. I don't think that there is enough attention to the propriety of government decisions.
The Honourable Paula Bennett.
Speaker, now that we've heard from